In this episode, I will show you exactly how I set up my Dutch buckets for this year's winter cauliflower crop in my hydroponic system. These are the buckets that I'm using for this year for our winter crop of cauliflowers. They're 10 litres. We used to use 25 litre drums, but because our plants get fed 3 or 4 times a day, their root system only ends up being about that big, so we don't need a bucket twice the height of this, because the roots will only come down to about here, because they don't need to look for nutrient, it's fed to them. So they puff their roots out in a ball like so that they can collect as much nutrient as possible. This is a line that we use as a drainer in the buckets. It's 13 millimeters internal diameter, about 15 on the outside. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to use a 14 mil spade bit, which is that one there, and we're going to drill a hole in the bottom of the bucket. Easily done. Alright, so that's 14 mil and the outside diameter is about 15, and you will notice it doesn't fit in very easily. So what I've done, I had an old pair of orchid secateurs and I've taken them in half, and I use one side of the blade, which is quite sharp. I keep it honed up on a diamond hone. So what I do with that, I just very carefully run it around inside the hole, like so, pressing down with a little bit of light pressure, and that sharp edge slowly opens up that hole till I can get that piece of 13 millimeter poly into the hole. We want it to be forced in. We don't want the hole to be too big. We want it to be forced in. We don't want too bigger. Not quite yet. Not quite yet, even though we're going to put a couple of beads of silicone on it. Too big a hole there, even though we're going to put a couple of beads of silicone on it, and there we go. Alright, that's the first part of the operation. You can see that the bleeder line has come through. And what we're going to do now is we're going to put a couple of 1-inch nails. We're going to heat them up and put them into that pipe there, because we're using 7 mil scoria. By putting 2 of these in, one that way and one at right angles, there's a close-up of the 1-inch nails in place. We're reducing the hole size for our scoria to drop through down to about 3 to 4 mil, and it won't drop through because we don't want scoria dropping down into this pipe and clogging it up. So I'll get this ready, put it on a pair of pliers, and using a gas flame I'll heat up the end of that nail. It doesn't have to be very much, because it very easily goes through the poly pipe. And that's the first one there. Alright, I'll get another one ready. Turn that round, we'll come in from the opposite side. Heat gun again. And then this time bring the nail in at right angles to the last one we put in. And there you can see the 2 nails in there. Turn the gas off, we don't want that now. So we let that sit for 10-20 seconds to let the nails cool down. because we don't want them to catch in the bottom of the bucket. So we pull the 13mm poly line down. You can see right inside the bucket down there, nice and tight. Right, we're going to silicone that in a moment. But first up, we need to cut this poly line coming out here. We don't want that length on it. This is our 2-inch mark, and we leave about another 1/2 inch off the end of it, which is there. So I'll make a mark on that. And cut the excess off. So when this bucket has got its plant in it and it's set into the system, that bleeder there will drop into the 75mm 3-inch tube we've got running down, PVC tube that takes the nutrients back into the reservoir, and that'll sit into it without touching on the bottom. This is what we use to feed the plants with. It's attached to a 19mm poly line that runs the full length of the bench and is powered by an aquarium pump. At the moment, I think because we've got reduced numbers of buckets, we're using 1,000 litres an hour. We've got about 3 dozen, a bit under 3 dozen buckets that we're using for our winter crop. Our summer crop, we have 40 buckets with tomatoes in, so we have a bigger pump that pumps about 2,500 litres an hour. So what I've done here is I've drilled a hole in here, a 6mm hole for this 4mm internal diameter poly line. This is a sample line that will be connected into the feeder line down here, the 19mm feeder line. Then it will go through the side of the bucket like this and sit here in relation to, this is about where the plant will be there, and the nutrient runs straight onto the plant. So the less work the plant has to do, growing roots, etc., is better because it uses any excess energy to grow the plant and fruit. So that's why we feed it 3 times a day. In summer we feed 4 times a day for the tomatoes, but because it's nowhere near as hot, I think it's 8 degrees at the moment, we don't need to feed the plants quite as often, so they get 3 feeds a day during winter. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to put a bead of silicone all the way around there, and then reverse the bucket. We're going to seal that area there between the side of the pipe and the bottom of the bucket with a bead of silicone. That's our silicone sealer. I'll pump it up a little bit, get some silicone coming out, and then we're going to run it. Not at the moment, we're not, because it's gone hard. I found out what yesterday's caulking compound problem was. The silicone in the tube had gone hard. I hadn't used that cylinder for a long time. It had gone hard and I couldn't squeeze any of it out. So I had to get a new cylinder. So anyway, we're back to where we were. Now we're going to put a bead of silicone that covers down here where the nails and the 13mm tube is. And I'll have a quick look at that. I might have to open the... No, I think that's all right. All right. Now I'll put a bead around the outside here, and I think I will cut a piece off that tube to make it a little bit wider. All right, here we go. Aha, that's looking better. I'll just spin this round, making sure that the silicone gets down on the base of the bucket. Doesn't matter how much it comes up up the tube as long as it's flat on the bottom of the bucket. Alright, that's the first one. So once again, we've got to get right inside where we put the nails to stop the scoria getting into the exit tube, which will then clog it up and the Dutch bucket will overflow. We run our way round the bottom here, making sure that the silicone catches on both the bottom and the pipe. It's coming out pretty thick, but it'll certainly do its job. Alright, we'll put that one down on the floor. And I'll finish off the other three, and then that'll be it. Alright, there's the next set of buckets that I've done. 5 of them. I need those tomorrow for putting some more broccoli seedlings in and putting them into the system. Alright, so there it is. Tomorrow I'll do that. These are the cauliflowers that we've planted already in our new set of bucket that you saw me preparing a few moments ago in my workshop. These are ones that went in a week later. They're nowhere near as big yet. That's a reservoir system with a pump in it that feeds the plants 3 times a day. You can see that they're starting to look pretty good. They've been in there for about a fortnight now. They've been establishing a serious root system and they're starting to drag in a lot of nutrient. So from now on we'll see them growing pretty quickly. As you can see, they're healthy little plants.